House of the Dead is a retro arcade series published by
Sega,
a horror light gun franchise that has made its place alongside fellow horror titles like Resident Evil and Clock Tower as the games that greatly popularised the horror genre. It was also a popular icon of Sega in general, making appearances in games like Sega Superstars, All-Stars Racing, All-Stars Tennis, Project X Zone, and the Sega Heroes mobile game. Just like Resident Evil, it even inspired movie adaptations. We don't talk about either of them. The franchise was developed by Sega AM Research and Development No. 1, or just Sega AM1 to make things easier on the tongue, and directed by Takashi Oda, the lead brainchild of the mainline series. Oda was initially hired by Sega to develop an attraction at their 1993 Joypolis theme park called the Astronomicon, and in that same year, he was made director of the puzzle and action Sandoru arcade games.
I understood that reference.
With the thriving success of Sega AM2's Virtua Cop series, Sega AM1 tasked itself with making its own light gun game that would differentiate itself from its sister company, and so Oda decided that this game's theme should revolve around horror. AM1 aimed to design something mature audiences would have fun playing, stylising the game like a European horror movie to make the setting feel gritty and dark. The team used the undead as the main enemies of the game, as Oda believes that the shambling, tangible zombies were more realistic in horror than ghosts and other phenomenon. The game was in development for just over a year, facing time constraints and over-ambitious ideas that were either simplified or scrapped completely. The character and creature artwork was designed on the fly, handing over the finished artwork to Sega's AM4 division to design the arcade cabinet for the game. And my god, all the cabinets for the House of the Dead games look so good, just like how fucking terrifying the art looks in general. The tower of zombies crashing through a dimly lit door, the one on the ground reaching for the agent's leg, the rapid fire effect above the gun showing how nimble yet desperate this guy is. I remember being a tiny child going to the bowling alleys. The staple of bowling alleys was the arcade section at the back. Nearly every arcade held at least one House of the Dead game, and the one I remembered the most was the original. The artwork of the machine was so intriguing to me. The cabinet had a very gothic appearance that contrasted all the other machines. It was not glowing and upbeat, it was almost dirty and bloody looking. It had a terrifying monster looking into the distance on both sides of the machine. It had warning messages stating that this game strikes terror into the person's heart, and multiple warnings telling you to not go into the house alone. The original arcade game was met with overwhelming success, spawning 4 or 5 spin-offs? And I've stated before, you'd be hard-pressed to find an arcade that didn't have a House of the Dead cabinet, although you probably wouldn't have found one in Germany and Indianapolis, since their laws on violent video games brought controversy to the game's gore. The team worked around this, however, by including an option to change the colour of the blood to colours like green and blue, in order to draw the attention away from the violence by making it seem less realistic. The arcade cabinets have also been adapted into many console games, which make use of advanced hardware such as Wii remotes or Move controllers to emulate light gun arcade machines, as well as adding extra game modes or challenges to prolong an otherwise short experience. A strong ongoing series to be sure, but for this video I want to go back to the original, the one that started its shining success, and the one, to me, feels the most visually, musically, and atmospherically engaging of the franchise. I mean, not that there's anything unsatisfying with the later titles in the slightest, but I don't fucking know how to conclude. This script writing is so fucking hard. So please let me dive straight away into why I want to talk about Taha Ho You Say of the ad.
Yes.
Before dumping all your pocket change into the machine, the looped demo gives you a nice rundown of what to expect from this game, starting off with opening credits that reflects the style of 7's opening sequence. You can really tell the team was inspired by the violently shifting text and the weird scribbly film effects, which even Oda didn't know why he liked it. He just thought it looked cool and spooky and decided to pull it in. It then cuts to an office where an old school rotary dial phone begins to ring.
I've fallen, and I can't get up!
Pulling into a photo of 2 agents and a female. The intro then switches to different shots of undead creatures in a large mansion, chasing down DBR scientists who are not even trying to avoid death. Do you have sight impairment, or are you just trying to find a fucking excuse? Laying waste to the unlucky ones, considering the pool of blood that they lay in. One of the shots features the caller of the telephone and the woman in the photo, DBR researcher Sophie Richards, surrounded by the creatures at the mansion's entrance. And from here we get dramatic close-ups of the playable characters engaging these monsters. Player 1. AMS agent Thomas Rogan, codename Eager Eagle, known for being a hothead on the field and is also engaged to Sophie Richards. And performing a Kingdom Hearts dodge roll from out the corner is Player 2, AMS agent G, codename Silver Fang, a calm and collective individual who's probably not a robot. Not even AMS knows much about him and refers to his skills and mindset as digital. And from here we see the maniacal genetic engineer and main antagonist of the game, Dr. Curian, who has the hammiest sounding evil voice in the world. Quickly panning to an indistinguishable figure on a large podium and finally revealing me outside the mansion with the title card of the game, and my god, what a logo. Angular gothic font with words that are tightly fitted together, drenched in blood and different sized letters. Even the game's signature film scribble effect is visible in the word's backdrop colours, with the crooked arm of a creature reaching out. The words "the" resemble building rooftops, particularly mansions, due to how the top of the words are sharp and crooked, which makes the logo feels like it just loosely resembles the mansion that the whole game takes place in. And on the right of the logo features a dark, rusty metal silhouette of Rogan. The game had working titles like The Horror Show, The Deadly Dead, or just a very simple zombies. Since no one in AM1 knew how to speak English, their naming process was solely on what series of words looked the coolest. And I find it interesting how people see words in foreign languages as cool, mysterious, and creative inspirations for art. It would be similar to English viewers looking at the giant cool symbol on the Hokage's building like, this is quality shit, while a Japanese viewer would just simply read it as Hiya! The crew settled with House of Dead, which is a rough translation of their Brainstorm title, Shi no Ie, or Death House, as Oda stated that it implies this house is where victims go to die, while the edited House of the Dead, to me, could imply that this building now belongs to the undead. You know, they happily pay for the deposit of the property and they're just driving out all the DBR squatters. After loading in all your pennies and hitting start, the game immediately shows a white screen covered with a broken film reel filter. The first chapter. We are then briskly shown a scene of a man who sounds like he just realised he forgot to switch the stove off. Oh no! Cue a dramatic car screech as the 2 agents arrive on scene, or just the 1 agent if you have no friends, or in my case, 0 agents because the game scared the fucking shit out of me. The 2 load their guns and run straight into the cool gameplay.
Others are still inside. Save them.
The House of the Dead is a rail shooter, which means the game automatically proceeds down paths while the player aims and shoots at enemies, obstacles, and potential prizes. Creatures are constantly getting in your face at every corner, either attacking from a distance with projectiles or approaching you in swarms. After brief movement, you will encounter various creatures and will not progress forward until the threat is dealt with. For me, I just love the camera shaking when it's stationary. Most rail shooters have the perspective just shift between cover and targets as if you were a floating robot, but in House of the Dead, the screen slowly bobbles and rotates to the closest enemy, making the head movement feel very realistic. Shooting a creature's limbs can sever them, accompanied by bloody splatters of big holes in their body parts, which was so gross but cool at the time. Allowing creatures' body parts to be removed was a big task for AM1. For the damage system to work, the team had to create around 3 to 4 different models of the same enemy to show the various stages of damage, such as missing arms, torso, or a completely fucked up face. But the hard effort paid off, as it feels satisfying rapid firing every part of the enemy and watching them melt into bolognese on the floor. Projectiles can be deflected with bullets, and every humanoid creature can be quickly dispatched with a headshot or 2. Oda stated that it was initially a risky decision allowing enemies to keep getting closer to the player, as other arcade shooters will have enemies hiding behind cover or being placed far away, thus making it challenging for players to shoot. The approaching enemies add a sense of panic and enjoyment as they become easier to target, but also just as equally dangerous as they draw closer to attack. Players will have 6 rounds to fire before being required to reload, which is accompanied by a delightful reload in bright bold letters. Shooting outside of the screen will reload the gun unless you're an obstinate little shit and decide to continue firing an empty gun. This will make the game go all passive aggressive and demand you to
shoot outside of the screen.
At both corners of the screen, respective players' health is displayed as burning torches, red for player 1 and blue for player 2, fitting for a Spooky Mansion horror game. A maximum of 5 torches can be held, and taking damage will play a quick animation of the torch burning out and disappearing, which is a lovely little detail. Another detail that's nice and spooky is the ways you can be damaged in this game. As well as having a torch removed, the screen temporarily shakes and a bloody impact is visible on screen, which is different depending on how the player took damage. Bloody teeth marks for bites, cuts for knives and axes, even planting itself on a screen for a brief period, bloody splatters for impact attacks, claw slashes for claw slashes, even an altered scattered cut wound for blowtorches and chainsaws. The damage effects add to the horror. It feels like your character sustained a violent wound, and not a family-friendly shatter effect used in other rail shooters. Losing all your torches will initiate a countdown to continue, giving you 9 seconds to scramble around your pockets for change. If the countdown ends, the game plays a brief cinematics of the agents falling over dead with a catchy tune. And then showing how much progress you made before dying. While shooting down hordes of creatures, DBR researchers will also appear on screen, trying to avoid the carnage. Players will run into situations where they must rescue researchers from an oncoming attack. Rescuing them will sometimes result in the researcher awarding the player with a life bonus, and they sound like they're receiving a compliment whenever you save them.
Okay, you're looking nice.
Thank you.
Failing to stop the creature killing the researcher will not result in a punishment, but accidentally shooting a researcher will deplete 1 torch. You're also probably wondering why I'm referring to the enemies as creatures and not zombies. Well, according to Oda, House of the Dead follows a more sci-fi theme, as the monsters encountered are experiments conducted by Kurian and his staff. Oda saw the idea of zombification as unoriginal, instead classifying zombies as experiments that are copied and created. Unfortunately, media and adverts name the creatures as zombies, so... Sorry Oda, sucks to see your idea being overshadowed by the thing you swore to destroy. They are not all shambling zombie-like humans. There are also various animal creatures that take the forms of winged canines, monkeys, toads, bats, maggots, and spiders. I see the term creatures as a classification for the different enemies, similar to what other game franchises use, like Heartless, Nobodies, Noise, Shadows, Demons, Shades, Machines, Monsters, all of those. The designs of the creatures are wide in variety, as AM1's design process was to make the creatures the main characters of the game, while making the agents look generic to make the setting feel more realistic. While drawing the concepts of the creatures, the team assigned each of them codenames to avoid development errors, and strangely, most of the names are generic English names, which is pretty funny. I shall list the enemies' names throughout the video, but one of the very few creatures with a Japanese name was the mummy-like Kagyo, which was the team's favourite enemy design because they were proud in making it look very dried up and mummified. Dealing with the first onslaught of Neils, Cyrils, and Kenthis, the agents find Sophie exhausted at the mansion's fountain, and the interaction is different depending on which agent you play as. Playing as her fiancé Rogan will cause him to panic seeing Sophie in danger, and she will say,
Rogan, it's you!
Whereas playing as G will have him ordering her to escape, and she responds like a regular DBR researcher would.
Thank you.
Which is odd. I thought you two would be friendly, seeing as though you've in the photo with all 3 of you. I don't know. Actually, it's interesting how the 2 playable characters work, depending on which player slot is in use and whether 1 or 2 people are playing. The story will remain the same no matter what, but the formations of characters can influence the dialogue. Even extends to the pair of them bantering a little when entering the mansion.
Let's go in. Sure, why not?
The reunion with Sophie is short-lived, however, as a gigantic winged creature swoops down and captures her, before flying off into the mansion's horizon.
If she breathes, she's a thought!
After shooting up more Cyrils and a surprise attack from an beaten A, the agents run into a rescue situation that can completely change the course of the stage, something that makes the replay value of this game insane. The game has a variety of alternative routes that can be selected depending on the player's actions. Allowing the Simon creature to toss the researcher off the bridge will force the players down the stairs and through the mansion's sewage system, fighting Beul, Kagyo, and Flying Devilon before running into a tunnel where another researcher is under attack, which triggers another branching path. Allowing the researcher to die or not has the player traversing alternative routes through the mansion's courtyard, taking out creatures like Cyril, Neil, Sam, and running out the shed is a chainsaw-wielding Samson! Saving a researcher who could just probably drop from that landing. It really doesn't look that far down if you just bend your legs or something. The agents then run through a withered-looking corridor with collapsed pillars, before ending up in a room where a researcher needs help. Dealing with a Saruzo leads the player into a rainy corridor where they hear Sophie's voice. Unless... Eliminating the Simon creature and saving the researcher takes the agents on a completely different path directly through the mansion's entrance. It's crazy the number of branching paths that you can take in this chapter. The team was planning to expand this idea, like allowing players to choose a starting point or having each branch lead to a completely different ending, though time constraints made this impossible, and thus stuck with the branching routes that lead to the same end.
Sorry lads, locked doors, little switch just flicks, you know.
The textures of the mansion's interior and outdoor architecture look so gothic and beautiful despite the limited low poly engine. Every surface has very dirty stained textures and heavy shades of black to make the environment feel withered and very creepy. Some of my favourite areas includes the main entrance of the mansion. It's so memorable to me entering the mansion and seeing the Ceruso bring down the chandelier in this withered spooky front hall. More of my favourites includes the billiards room and the entrance hallway. Aside from the stupid fucking researcher who thinks it's a good idea to suddenly pop up in shooting range, the ambience of these rooms are dark and creepy, especially the light coming from the windows. Like, the light is probably just a texture on the walls and floor, but the effect of it is super atmospheric. I really love the level design, and so did AM1. Although it took the largest time to plan and create, designer Hiroyuki Taguchi explained that once they got started on designing it, they just couldn't stop. They wanted to design every detail right down to the trim on the doorways, and my god does it show. Every location feels sinister and dark, which also makes the multiple branches an extreme delight to play through.
Perfect.
Regardless of the route you take, it all leads to the same room that Sophie is trapped in, so I guess that man-bat thing really meant it when he said that no one was leaving alive. The reunion is cut very short as a large formidable monster crashes from the ceiling, and judging by how Sophie was being held up, I guess Rogan just ran away and used her as bait or something. The monster swiftly takes one of Sophie's stocks, and a dramatic closing revealing its name and weak point could only mean that this is a boss fight. Every boss fight in the franchise is named after a major arcana from a tarot deck, as this boss is known as the Chariot. Every boss cinematic reveals research notes that detail the weak points players should be shooting at, and they all come with tight numbers. Wanna know why they have them? Me too! Twevia. This boss is the only enemy in the game that was animated via motion capture. Originally, AM1 attempted to animate every enemy with shambling real-life actors, but they thought that the movements were just too silly and human-like, using the motion actors as references while they manually animated the movements. Except for Chariot! Being a large axe-wielding behemoth made the human movements feel more natural, as they had a member of staff who could make an intimidating axe-swinging shambling motion. The Chariot's weak point is its chest. Shooting at it causes it to fall backwards and vomit a green ooze. After shooting its health down to the halfway point, the armor explodes and reveals its fleshy muscle tissue, which becomes its new weak point, and it's almost pathetic how easy this guy is at this point. Every shot at its muscle knocks it backwards, which means rapid firing at all of its body parts just tragically demolishes this boss without getting a cheeky steal at one of your torches.
強大すぎる。俺のパワーを封印する役目を持つ鎧が今砕かれた。そうか。
Defeating the Chariot, Rogan realizes he probably shouldn't have abandoned his fiancée like that and tends to her.
You must stop Curian, or else something terrible will happen.
I'm dead.
Sophie?
Clearing a stage reveals the player's score and how many survivors they saved, awarding life bonuses up to a maximum of 2 depending on how many survived. Strangely, the photo in the stages shows 10 researchers when it's only possible to save 7 of them in the first stage. Either this includes victims like the dude who forgot to turn off the stove, or the remaining 3 that are only savable in the alternative routes, which perhaps leaves their fates ambiguous. Chapter 2.
Revenge!
Bursting through the doors, the agents are greeted by a barrel-throwing Bentley creature. From here, another branch path is available. Shooting the trapdoor drops the agents to a lower pathway, where they shoot creatures through hidden walls,
Poggers!
and walking through dimly lit corridors where we combat the claw-wielding Rubens. Running into the kitchen area, a creature ambush reveals hanging torsos on meat hooks, which can be shot at for fun. At one point, the wall next to the player explodes, throwing the camera on the ground before combating a Bentley and the sledgehammer-wielding Gilmore. Rushing into a crimson red room with stained glass windows, we save another researcher who blushes from being rescued. She probably knew Sophie croaked and now she wants tips on Rogan. Dealing with the knife-throwing drakes on the ceiling, the agents enter the bar area, freeing the researcher and busting down a bookcase that reveals a secret, very tight passage where creatures may attack per corner.
I slam my penis in the car door.
Reaching the mansion's balcony, the agents then enter one of the guest rooms. Unless... Leaving the trapdoor alone will have the agents use the door to the roaring winds of the outer walkway, where creatures roaming the grounds are visible. Entering corridors filled with creepy paintings, the agents deal with falling Ebiton bees and a pair attack by a Drake and Reuben, before rescuing a researcher in a dark hallway and entering rooms where the ground is unstable. The door then takes them to the mansion's balcony, dealing with the roaming creatures and entering one of the guest rooms. Shooting up a blood-stained bed full of Murrah creatures, the agents then have the option to shoot the bookcase in the room, which reveals another researcher. Was she imprisoned there by some douchebag creature? Or is this a hiding spot that we just exposed and now she's in danger?
Thank you.
I don't know, she said thank you at least, so I guess she's safe in this murder house full of horrible, scary monsters. Walking through another outer hallway, the agents find themselves in a mechanical room with yet another branching pathway. Shooting the control panel will raise a pathway shortcut to the door, where the metallic and resistant Kage creatures jump out of their pods to attack. If you don't shoot the control panel, however, Rogan will exclaim,
It's a dead end.
and jump to the lower floor, battling even more creatures in the first path to reach the exit. From there, the agents run through another tight corridor and into the mansion's first research centre. Saving the researchers reveals there's more to be saved upstairs. Pushing the agents to climb the ladder to the rooftop and encountering a familiar figure. Watching the researchers inevitably fall to their deaths, the Hanged Man prepares to strike, its weak point being its entire body. Cool. Its full body may be weak, but it starts the fight with an army of Devilons, commanding them to attack as you whittle down its health. Switching between firing at the body and firing at the closest Devilons is your best bet not to lose a torch. Reducing its health to the halfway point instantly kills all surrounding Devilons for reasons, before engaging in phase 2, where it flutters around wildly before shouting and swiping at the player. The sound Hanged Man makes when he shouts die is actually a recycled voice clip of the Aerodiver enemies from Virtua Cop. Whittling its health down to a quarter, the creature flies away, and as the agents try to find it, they are ambushed from behind, knocking them off the platform and just barely clinging to the edge of the rooftop, where they engage in the final phase of the boss fight. Fully depleting its health causes it to roar and fall to the ground with a big crash.
Say live and let die.
As the agents use their fucking incredible upper body strength to pull themselves upwards and prepare themselves for the next stage.
We won't let you have it your way, Curian.
Chapter 3. Crashing through the window, the agents enter the laboratory where they encounter two ball and chain wielding Harris creatures. Harris was the most difficult creature for AM1, as the chains made it very challenging to animate. Shooting the ball deals no damage, and just like other metallic objects shot at, plays a cartoon ricochet sound effect. Realising the doors are locked, the agents take the other door to the security room, guarded by two moody creatures, and finding the security card.
This must be the security card.
Dealing with upgraded versions of Kagyo called Bourbon, we use the card to progress further. The door leads them to an eerie prison area, with bloodthirsty creatures eagerly waiting for the doors to open, including a rare creature called a Neobity? These creatures are mainly background scenery, so it's rare being able to fight hostile ones. Saving a researcher from a cell of creatures, including a Robert, the agents plough through a series of rooms until they end up in a neon industrial area, where they encounter a bunch of Terran. Killing those fucking horrible things leads us to two elevators, two more branch pathways. Climbing into the left elevator takes us down to a large factory, where platforms are moving and creatures are either tossing shit at you or swooping down on rail hooks. Taking another elevator up leads the agents through a series of winding pathways before arriving at a hostage situation. Unless... Climbing into the right elevator takes us down to the mansion's duct room, ambushed by laser dagger-wielding parlor creatures from the water. The agents press on through, dealing with more creatures, saving a researcher, and finding more of those fucking awful spiders before ending the branch path at a hostage situation. This event also has branching paths, but this one feels more like a punishment. Saving the researcher has him giving you his security card, while failing to do so forces you to jump down the chute after his corpse to get the card.
It's too late. This must be the security card.
before being forced to climb back up the chute to open the door, whilst fighting far more creatures than you would if you saved the researcher. Running through the second research centre and gunning down creatures including the blowtorch flailing burner, another branch path is open by shooting the desired door. Both doors lead into the cultivation dome, a room that houses lava for some reason. I guess Kyrian built his mansion in Minecraft. The left door takes the shorter path with higher elevation, while the right door has the agents climb from the rails to the top, taking out more creatures than the shortcut. Regardless, we run into the centre of the dome where we finally confront the main villain.
Kyrian!
I must compliment you. I didn't think you could make it this far. However, this is it. Let's see how good you really are.
Before the agents can pursue him, they are stopped by the third boss of the game. A giant fucking spider! Whoa! The hermit's weak point is its head, which is also graphically shown in the artwork of this wretched thing. Trivia. The diagram of the hermit's head resembles a fly more than a spider. This was due to early developments of the game featuring the hermit with a fly's face before being redrawn to its current design. The hermit dives into the tunnel and the battle begins. Players must always shoot its head rapidly to knock it backwards, otherwise it can climb swiftly for a cheeky slash. Depleting its health a little, the hermit retreats, and the agents jump down like 30 feet into the shaft. So I'm guessing these guys do serious squats to avoid any fall damage. Phase 2 is just around the corner however, as the hermit begins firing web projectiles out of his arse, and continues to do so whenever its weak point is struck. When the hermit is on its last slither of health, it begins to start protecting its face with its legs as it presses towards you, trying to get a few slashes in when close enough. If you are accurate enough, you can push this spider to the end of the stage without a hope of it reaching you, making the battle feel like a human fighting an actual weak house spider.
No!
Killing the hermit allows the agents to continue onwards by walking directly over his corpse.
I'll get you, Kyrian.
Chapter 4.
The House of the Dead.
The agents land in a limestone tunnel underneath the mansion, dealing with the bulky creatures and shooting a device that unlocks a passage to the caverns further ahead. The music in this chapter is so intense and climactic compared to the previous stage themes, and oh dear, I didn't even cover the music in this game. AM1 wanted the sound design team to make the stage themes become gradually more scary as the players progress through the game. Tragedy stage music has a very action-packed feel to the music, with its electric guitars, drums, and just a tiny bit of horror strings to make you feel like you are here to kick zombie ass. Progressing into stage 2, the music is funkier and using synth instruments with pipe organs and the horror instruments becoming just a little bit more prominent. Partway through the Saturn version of the song, voice clips from the real-life 1986 Space Shuttle Challenger disaster can be heard. Another sample clip is of a little girl going, which is taken from the Tambourine's 1992 song, Hello Daddy.
Hello Daddy.
I have no idea why it's in this song. People speculate it's to reference Rogan's daughter, Lisa, but since House of the Dead 3 hasn't even been conceived yet, I assume it's just to make the song spookier. The theme song in truth keeps a bit of a rave theme going, but now the instruments feel more sinister. The bass in particular sounds foreboding, accompanied by a creepy high-pitched electrical instrument. And in the final chapter, the music is no longer actiony or clubby, it's now serious and dramatic. Strings and orchestral hits are the main instruments, with a choir of eerie voices accompanying it. Except for the Saturn version, which extends the song and switches the atmosphere of it quite a bit. it sacrifices the finality of the song with something more catchy and almost reminiscent of old 80s cop films, but it doesn't necessarily sound worse. I feel both of them fit well in different ways. The Saturn version still has that threatening atmosphere, it just shares that atmosphere with an action movie beat, while the arcade just goes full-blown horror. Before progressing into the caverns, however, a revived chariot drops from the ceiling and initiates a boss rush gauntlet. But nothing about him is different, so he's still a tragic boss fight where you're just putting him out of his misery. Pressing into the caverns, the Hangman returns for round 2, only this time you can even open fire on him the moment he appears on screen and before the health gauge even appears. By the time it shows, the Hangman is most likely at half his health, and all of his Devlin are dead before they can even give you COVID. He can't knock you off the stage this time, so all he will do is flutter around chaotically before zooming in at you. Killing the Hangman once again, the agents enter the 3rd research centre. If you've managed to rescue every single researcher in your playthrough, there is one room you enter before the research centre, a chamber adorned with life bonuses and shootable items that raise your score, so it's well worth trying your hardest to reap the lovely bonuses at the end. Enduring the final waves of the most durable creatures in the game, the agents enter the core of the research centre.
There's no way out, Kyrian.
I must admit, I really respect your consistency. But you will never, ever defeat me! Say hello to my masterpiece!
No, fuck you.
Kyrian then deactivates the large device in the room, known as the bioreactor, the device responsible for creating all the creatures and bosses. Oda explains that the device alters the DNA of humans and animals, messing around with the cells and creating man-slaughtering monsters. However, the standard creatures are all just defects. The Taro-named bosses are the successful creations, but are all simply trial runs, while his masterpiece awaits you inside the bioreactor, the Magician.
Who are you? Nobody gives me instructions. I shall destroy everything. What happened? Why don't you follow my instructions?
I don't want to!
Betraying his master, the Magician breaks down the centre's walls and awaits the 2 agents in one of the coolest looking final boss areas, as well as one of the most epic final boss themes ever. From his music and appearance, the Magician emits a very intimidating aura and is the most popular and recurring boss in the franchise. The team designed the Magician to look more humanoid, handsome, and a dramatic yet cool pose compared to all the previous threats to accentuate his power and intellect. And his bark is just as deadly as his bite, because man, this boss battle is ridiculous. For starters, the weak point is unknown, so first time players will probably be freaking out trying to figure out how to deal with this threat. He does indeed have weak points, the exposed muscle tissue on his right arm, left thigh, and right shin, but they're not so easy to hit as he's constantly going apeshit around the arena, flash stepping all around you while leaving after images in his wake. Using his pyrokinesis, he will stop teleporting to immediately throw 2 fireballs at the players, performing graceful little turns as he does so. Performing this twice, he will bump up the number to 4 consecutive fireballs. Shooting the fireballs will cancel the attack from reaching you, and once the Magician flinches, he will enter the next phase. He will resume dashing around the arena 2 to 3 times before attempting to slash at you with a fire-imbued arm. Shooting the weak points as quickly and accurately as he can will make the Magician flinch and try again, up to 6 times before he starts shifting between his first and second phases. The colour of his after images will tell you which phase attack he's using, blue for the fireballs and red for the slash attacks. Depleting his health to below halfway will result in the Magician teleporting to the middle of the stage and begin charging his fire powers into a rainstorm of fireballs, which must be shot at to avoid taking any damage. I think at this point, with tied fingers and used up money, this boss was most likely designed to either eat up more of your change or die trying. The exhausting battle ends with the Magician's death, and as he's blowing up he mutters his final words.
You haven't seen anything yet.
The The musty skies clear away and the agents finally rest. There are 3 separate endings for this game depending on who you played as. Rogan will claim that he has nothing left to live for, but he must keep pushing forward and mourning for Sophie, while G just proclaims
mission completed.
However, since it's canonical that both the agents were present in this game, the true ending of the game features both protagonists, and as the credits roll, the camera backtracks through the stages as they both return back to the car, with the 7 scribble effects present in the credits. The game ends with the camera turning back one more time to look at the mansion, and your performance in the game influences whether Sophie truly died or not. Scoring under 62,000 points will result in 2 bad endings depending on what number the unit's digit is. Finishing on any number other than 0 will simply end the game with a view of the mansion, whilst ending with a 0 has the camera zoom back into the main hall of the mansion, where a reanimated Sophie is shambling. So I guess she's an actual zombie now and not a creature? Oda, what the fuck? But considering that the 3rd game features their daughter Lisa as the protagonist, the good ending is the canonical one, as the camera zooms into the mansion and Sophie's recovered!
Thank you.
House of the Dead 1 is one of my personal favourite arcade games, being that it left such a lasting impression on me as a child that I'm now reviewing it at 22. It doesn't matter how blocky and limited the graphics are, to me this game has held up incredibly well. Having an arcade machine encourage replayability through branched routes was such a fantastic idea. The game's textures and environment is both terrifying and pure eye candy. The soundtrack is extremely memorable. The small details like UI and presentation are satisfying. Everything about this game is amazing to me, and it must have been amazing for everyone else because there's a remake! Looks like we'll be seeing this horror classic in a brand new light, as a Nintendo Switch trailer revealed a remake published by Forever Entertainment. Looking at the images on the Nintendo page, this looks really promising. The enemy designs look faithful to the original models, the environments are incredibly familiar to me, and the hermit now looks nastier than ever. I think my only minor criticism is the UI and sound shown in the trailer, as the fonts do not look spooky chaotic, almost looks a bit cartoonish, and it also plays a weird blop-like sound whenever a number is added to your score, which is a little immersion breaking. But the trailer did say that the visuals and sounds are still in development, so who knows? But until then, we still got this OG gem to experience, and my god, what an experience it was.